So, thousands of years ago, the Babylonian goddess of creation was just, I mean, she was literally split in half to make the sky and the earth.
Yeah, completely dismembered.
Right. And then over in Egypt, you have this goddess of bloodshed who was actually tricked into drunkenness by her own family. Like, just so she'd stop doing the exact job she was designed for.
Which is pretty wild when you think about it.
It is. It really is. It's like we didn't just forget our ancient terrifying mythologies over time. We actively dismantled them. We completely sanitized them.
Oh, absolutely. We scrubbed them clean.
Yeah. And the big question is why? Like, why did humanity feel this intense need to edit the divine? So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you here with us.
I'm really glad you're tuning in.
Yeah, and today we are focusing on a single, just really striking text. It's called Nothing Was Ever Cast Out of Her.
Such a powerful piece.
It really is. And the mission we are undertaking with you today is to basically completely rethink our relationship with darkness, with destruction, and with our own inner shadows, too.
Because it's all connected, right?
Exactly. We're exploring how human history just systematically edited our myths, our natural world, and even our own minds to make them feel well, to make them feel safe and manageable.
Right. And what we ended up losing in that process.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, because I think to rethink darkness, we first have to look at how we currently, completely mislabel it.
Yeah, the premise of this text really requires a fundamental rewiring of how we even perceive the universe. Because the author argues that we've constructed this massive false binary.
A false binary between, presence and absence.
Right. When humanity encounters something frightening or, destructive, our immediate instinct is to categorize it as an absence.
Like it's a void or a hole.
Exactly. We look at an eclipse or rot spreading quietly through an orchard or a storm just flattening a coastline, and we label it a void, like the sacred is missing.
Right. The text even points to astronomical events, right? Like a supernova collapsing a star into gravity that's so dense it literally eats light.
Yeah, and we frame those events as missing pieces of the divine, rather than recognizing them as just, a different shape the sacred is actively wearing.
It's like what we're left with today is this vastly diminished version of the sacred. I was thinking it's almost like a botanical garden, right? Where everything is super manicured and the wild, untamed jungle is just entirely paved over.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And it gets deeply personal, too, for all of us, because the text points to things like the cell that forgets how to stop dividing.
Right, cancer.
Yeah. Or the deafening silence after a terminal medical diagnosis, or, the year that takes someone's mother and hands absolutely nothing back in return.
Which is just, it's devastating.
It is. And my hypothesis here is that the human brain just cannot tolerate the idea of a sacred architecture that includes that level of intense suffering.
No, we really struggle with it.
Right. So to protect our own sense of meaning, we classify the tragedy as a void. Like, oh, this is a place where the divine temporarily left the room. We treat it as a glitch in the system.
Yeah, that cognitive dissonance is exactly what the author is targeting here. We treat destruction as a software glitch in reality.
But it's not a glitch, is it?
No, not according to this text. The author challenges this head-on, asserting that darkness is not a hole where the sacred used to be. It is the sacred. The underlying concept is that the primordial creator, this ultimate mother figure, she birthed literally everything.
Everything, not just the nice stuff.
Right. She is not just responsible for the curated, nursery-safe portions of reality.
So we aren't just talking about, the soft morning light, the lullabies, or the harvest coming in right on time.
Not at all. We are talking about the absolute totality of existence. That means the wolf's jaw closing on the fawn's neck comes from the exact same breath as the fawn's very first steps.
Wow. The exact same breath.
Yeah. The famines, the floods, the mass extinction events that erased 90% of what was breathing on Earth, none of that happened in spite of her. It happened as her.
Okay, but if we take that literally, it means the brutality is baked right into the design.
It does.
And I kind of want to push back on that on behalf of anyone listening right now who might feel just a visceral rejection of that image.
Sure. Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Because if we are looking at a tragedy, right, say a predator tearing apart its prey, isn't it just an evolutionary survival mechanism for us to want the fawn to survive?
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we intellectually or emotionally reconcile something as brutal as a wolf's jaw being part of the exact same divine blueprint without just feeling completely alienated from nature?
Well, flinching at that brutality is a biological imperative, like you said. We're wired to survive, so we naturally recoil from things that consume life. But the text provides a structural answer to that discomfort.
Okay, what's the structural answer?
It states that there is simply no version of this creator small enough to leave anything out. Human beings desperately want to believe that there is an outside to the universe, like a cosmic landfill where the ugly, excluded, violent half of creation can just be shipped off to.
Right, and blamed on some separate evil force.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But outside of her isn't a location that exists. The geometry of the universe just doesn't have an exterior.
Oh, man. If there is no outside to this cosmic house, that forces a really uncomfortable realization about human history.
How so?
Well, at some point, humanity must have decided we just couldn't handle living in the same room as the dark. So we actively started rewriting our own mythologies to create an artificial border. We literally invented an outside.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the cosmological shift that happened as civilizations grew more complex.
The shift in how we told stories about the gods.
Exactly. Humanity eventually developed what the text calls the old dualist picture. It's this framework of like a light goddess fighting a dark usurper, or a sky father battling some serpent of the deep.
Which we see everywhere. I mean, it's the human brain's evolutionary preference for binary categorization.
Oh, for sure. It's so much easier to process existential dread if you can just divide the world into two distinct columns, right? The good guys protecting us and the bad guys trying to hurt us.
Yeah, but that binary categorization, it really only offers psychological comfort. It belongs to a much smaller, much more frightened cosmology.
That's exactly what the text argues. This dualistic framework was built by people who needed the universe to function like a courtroom.
A courtroom.
Yeah, because in a courtroom, there is a clear verdict. You are either guilty or innocent. You are a creator or a destroyer.
Right, there's no middle ground.
But the physical universe isn't a courtroom. It is a breathing body. And the primordial mother was never a defendant on trial in that courtroom. She was the room itself.
She wasn't on trial, she was the room itself.
I love that. And I am just fascinated by the sociological mechanisms behind this shift.
It's super interesting.
Because the text goes through these specific historical examples, and you can almost perfectly map them onto the rise of human civilization.
Oh, totally.
Like when we started building cities and relying on agriculture, we needed nature to be predictable. The wild, untamed ecosystem suddenly became a huge threat to our crops and our survival.
So we had to tame the myths, too. Yes. We took mythic figures whose power was unpredictable and wild, and we just systematically exiled them.
Tiamat from Babylonian mythology is a stunning example of this exact mechanism at work.
Oh, she's the one who gets split in half, right?
Yeah. So Tiamat represented the primordial saltwater ocean, basically the ultimate symbol of untamed, chaotic nature. And in the older myths, she is the mother of everything.
But then things change.
Right. As Babylonian civilization advanced and became super reliant on irrigation, order, and predictable crop yields, the myth changed. Tiamat was suddenly cast as a monster.
A threat to the city.
Exactly. And she was slain by her own descendant, Marduk, who was, the champion of civilization.
And he literally split her body in half to construct the sky and the earth.
Yes. The entire visible universe in that cosmology is built out of her dismembered corpse.
They paved over the chaos to build the ordered world, and they only kept her name as a word for the enemy that civilization had to defeat.
It's a total rewrite. And you see the exact same psychological mechanism applied to Kali in Hindu traditions.
Right, because usually when people in the West think of Kali, they think of this terrifying demon.
Yeah, when interpreted through a Western sanitized lens, Kali is often reduced to a monster kept at the absolute fringes of the pantheon. But the text points out that in the oldest tantric readings, Kali is actually a mother mid-labor.
Yes. She is tearing, her tongue is out, she is dancing on a corpse, and she is covered in blood.
Because that is the visceral reality of birth.
Exactly. That is what birth actually costs. It's violent, it's incredibly dangerous, and it requires a body to be pushed to the absolute brink. She represented the ground of being itself, not some evil invader.
And we can trace this same pattern through Celtic mythology, too. Think about the Morrigan.
The crow goddess.
Right. She was eventually reduced to a mere war crow just to keep the battlefield and the womb in separate rooms.
Or the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. She was literally created to deliver bloodshed, but then later on she was written into myths where she had to be tricked into getting drunk just to stop her violence.
It's exactly. The overarching theme here is that early cultures simply decided that sovereignty, birth, and slaughter were just way too much for one single figure to hold.
So we shrank our own gods because we were terrified of them.
We did.
And the text even brings this phenomenon right up to the modern era. It notes how the witch was pushed to the edge of the village and eventually burned at the stake for basically the exact same offense.
Carrying a kind of power that didn't ask permission from the orderly authorities.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The tragic result of all this historical dismemberment is what we are staring at today. We are left with a mother edited down to what a frightened culture could stand to look at directly.
Just a fragment.
Yeah, a fragment wearing the whole name. We want the divine to be gentle, grateful, and manageable. We've taken half a portrait and fully convinced ourselves it's the entire picture.
But when we shrink our cosmology to just the sanitized nurturing parts, we run into a massive structural problem.
Right, and moving from mythology to ecology, the text makes this brilliant point about the physics of creation itself.
Yes, structurally speaking, if we have a creator who only creates, she actually becomes half a mechanism.
Because she would be generating constantly without any capacity to compost. She would fill a world that she has absolutely no way of making room for.
Exactly. And this forces complete reframing of how we understand entropy.
Because normally we think of entropy as the bad guy.
Right. Generally, entropy is viewed as the enemy of creation, the breakdown of systems, the decay of matter. But structurally, entropy is the exhale that must follow the inhale.
Oh, I like that. The exhale.
Yeah, because if there is no exhale, the lungs rupture, nothing breathes at all. Every single ecosystem that has ever functioned successfully on this planet runs on a closed loop where death actively feeds life.
Like the fallen tree on the forest floor. It's biologically necessary to create the nutrient-dense soil that feeds the new sapling.
Or the predator. It's mathematically required to cull the herd. Otherwise, the herd multiplies until they eat their environment bare and just starve themselves into a famine.
Right. Old cellular tissue has to clear out to make room for new growth. Without the destroyer aspect, you don't magically get a softer, gentler world. You just get a stagnant world clogged with unfinished things.
Exactly. It just doesn't work.
Okay, but I need to interject with another empathetic pushback here.
Sure.
Because I feel like we are dancing around the hardest part of this text. It is very, very easy for us to sit behind these microphones and appreciate the poetic image of a fallen tree feeding a sapling.
Right. That's the easy part.
But the author doesn't just stick to trees. They bring up the cancer cell that forgets how to stop dividing. They bring up the devastating year that takes someone's mother.
Yeah, they go right to the pain.
So how does the text philosophically justify deep, localized, personal tragedy as part of this closed loop without just sliding into a really cold, detached nihilism?
And that is the crux of the author's argument.
Mm.
What's fascinating here is that it hinges on the distinction between moral neutrality and a much larger frame of goodness.
Okay, explain that.
The text explicitly clarifies that this cosmic architecture is not morally neutral. It is not some vague, indifferent force that just shrugs at cruelty or turns a blind eye to human suffering.
But if it's not indifferent, how does it hold that level of pain?
By redefining what goodness actually is.
Mm.
The goodness of the primordial whole isn't the shallow, fragile kind of goodness that requires everything to stay pleasant and comfortable in order to remain sacred.
So it's not about keeping us comfortable.
Right. It's not a helicopter parent standing at the edge of a forest fire, wringing her hands, agonizing over whether the fire was a terrible mistake. Her goodness is expansive enough to hold the raging forest fire and the resulting seedlings in the exact same breath.
Without ranking which one is a lapse in judgment.
Exactly. It's not about ignoring the pain of the fire. It's recognizing that the fire is performing a vital structural function.
She is doing exactly what fire does through a forest that just needed emptying before it could grow back thicker.
Nothing she made was ever handed a note explaining it was a mistake.
Wow. And that includes the things that cause us agonizing pain. I mean, it requires us to massively expand our frame of reference to see the architecture of it. But the structural reality is that the closed loop of existence demands the exhale.
It does. And that is a really heavy, profound realization. And once we understand that the physical universe requires its dark, destructive exhale, the text performs its most crucial pivot.
Right, you have to look inside.
Exactly. As above, so below. We have to turn that lens inward and examine our own internal ecosystem.
And this is where the text speaks directly to you listening to this right now. We have to apply this cosmic architecture to the human mind, to your own personal shadows.
Think about the parts of yourself you hide.
Yes, think about the rage you constantly keep on a tight leash, the hunger or the ambition you feel deeply ashamed of, the ugly, messy, complicated grief that doesn't look anything like the polite, quiet sadness we see in movies.
Or those uninvited thoughts that make you feel like a dangerous stranger in your own head.
Yeah. And the tragedy is that we do to ourselves exactly what ancient civilizations did to Tiamat or the Morgan.
We split ourselves in half.
We really do. We treat our own anger or our messy grief as an intruder. We view those emotions as proof that some broken, defective piece has split off from the good version of ourselves.
And we believe that peace needs to be hunted down, suppressed, and dragged back into line.
But the text argues that none of those inner shadows are intruders. I mean, the exact same hand that shaped your capacity for deep empathy and softness also shaped your shadow.
You inherited the whole mother, the dark half included.
Right. You didn't inherit a flaw or a demon. You are just wrestling with a piece of your own innate biological architecture.
And understanding the mechanics of that psychology is really crucial here. The text uses this really powerful analogy of a house and a window to explain how this suppression actually plays out in our lives.
Okay, so what does this all mean?
Well, if you exile a part of yourself, if you push it out of your internal village like the witch, it doesn't just vanish. It still exists, and it still requires its needs to be met.
But because you have barred it from walking through the front door,
Right. It is forced to get those needs met sideways.
and that is the mechanism of the shadow.
Yeah.
If you refuse to own the room where your anger or your grief lives, it generally has to break the windows to get your attention.
Exactly. That is what makes a shadow dangerous.
It is the historical severance repeating itself on a microscale. An exiled, unwitnessed emotion will eventually act out, often as, passive-aggressive sabotage or sudden outbursts or even deep depression.
Because the cognitive load of constantly holding a door shut against your own mind is absolutely exhausting. It drains all your psychological resources.
I can only imagine. But wait, we should probably mention the caveat here.
Oh, definitely.
Oh.
The author is very careful to include a massive caveat. Recognizing your shadow is not a free pass to just unleash it destructively.
Right.
This philosophy is not an excuse to act out every dark impulse on the people around you. Taking your unexamined weather, your unchecked bitterness, or your explosive rage and dumping it onto a partner or a friend who didn't sign up to stand in your storm, that is not integration.
No, that's just offloading your shadow and making it someone else's problem. The relief the text is pointing toward isn't found in wreaking havoc. The true relief comes from simply dropping the war.
Yes, just putting down the weapon.
It comes from no longer spending massive amounts of energy trying to disown a part of your own ecosystem. If you just unlock the door and acknowledge, okay, the rage is in this room, the ugly grief is in this room, and they belong to the architecture of this house.
Then they stop needing to violently force their way out.
Right, because the grand illusion was that they could be cast out to begin with.
Exactly. Not at a cosmic scale,
Yeah.
and not at a personal scale. There is no separate address for the dark to be sent to live out.
There is no border between the holy and the unholy for it to cross because the universe doesn't have an outside.
It just doesn't.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this deep dive. The portrait of the universe and the portrait of the human mind was always whole.
The light and the dark, the fawn and the wolf, the softness and the shadow.
It only ever looked like a fractured, exiled reality because we kept describing half a portrait and desperately calling it the whole thing. The portrait was never the problem. It was only ever our frame that was too small.
A frame built by human hands that just flinched at the totality of existence.
Well said.
But, this raises an important question as we wrap up today.
What's that?
Well, we've talked about how this framework applies to the cosmos, to mythology, and to our own internal psychology. But if we scale this up to the societal level, it forces us to ask some very difficult questions about how we actually structure our communities.
No, that's fascinating. And this is exactly what we want you to mull over today as you go about your life.
Yeah, think about this. If society itself truly has no outside, no cosmic landfill where the messy, destructive elements can actually just disappear, how does that change the way we view our systems of justice?
Right. Because when we exile people, when we cancel them, or when we lock them away in carceral systems, are we just trying to throw them outside a room that has no exterior?
Are we just trying to build a border that doesn't exist?
If nothing can ever truly be cast out, what would a community look like that actually builds a frame large enough to hold its own shadows, rather than just constantly breaking its own windows?
It demands a complete reimagining of accountability, of forgiveness, and of integration at a cultural level.
A really profound thought to carry with you as you examine the frames you use to view the world. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We loved unpacking the architecture of the dark with you today.
It's been great.
Keep questioning your own boundaries and take care of yourselves out there.